Welcome back to the Crash the Pond podcast. It is a Sunday, February 2nd edition of the podcast and a little bit of a throwback today, a post-game edition. Does it count as a post-game if the game ended around 4 p.m. and we're recording 4 hours later?
It 100% does. It's the same day.
Okay. Okay. Just checking.
I think from the perspective of anyone that watched the game is going to want to have content the day after for their morning commute. I think if you're providing content for the morning after, then that counts.
That is a broad standard, but I'm a fan. So for those who were not around back in the day when this pod first started, we used to do podcasts after every single game, and I think we did that for 2 years.
We did it for 2.5 years because we did it 17-18, and then we did it 18-19, and then we did it 19-20 up until the shutdown.
Yeah, we logged a lot of hours. We talked about a lot of meaningless hockey.
We cut our teeth. The first season, at least they made the playoffs, and so at least there was that
a playoff
to digest, and there was
a
whole lot of single game information to talk about. But year two, I remember that was largely a fire Carlisle season of get him the hell out of here, and then we had the Bob Murray behind the bench.
That was fun.
And then we had 1 year of Dallas Aikens of, I remember that season hitting me of, I don't know how to talk about a team as bad anymore in a singular game.
1920 just is erased from my memory. That's like a season. That's the season where they traded for Matt Irwin and Sonny Milano.
That is, yep. That was
Christian Juice. That crazy Daniel Sprong trade tree, the Marcus Pettersson trade tree.
Yeah.
Where it goes Pettersson, Sprong, Juice. Yeah.
Wasn't there something else also mixed in there? Or am I forgetting something? That may have been it because Juice was waived.
Yeah, Juice was waived, but it was they got Sprong for Pettersson, who, by the way, just got traded. But and then they traded Sprong to the Capitals for Christian Juice. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was a weird season, but we used to do podcasts after every game, and those were truly post games because I think we would go live within the hour.
We would go live within 15 minutes typically.
Well, because the thing is,
if I was at the game, it was different.
If you were not at the game, we would go live within 15 minutes. So yeah, the Andre Kasha era, for someone putting that in our chat right now. I remember, were we doing the pod when? I think we were when Andre Kasha first got called up to the Ducks. Or it might have been right after that.
So I think we were.
Number 86, Andre Kasha was a time.
One of the first bits of the pod I remember, and now we're just going way back, is the Kevin Waugh fan club. That didn't shape out to be that great.
Kevin Waugh had a great stint with the Ducks.
He was fun.
He was fun. Do you want to know where he's been since?
Sure.
We are really just off the rails.
For anyone out there listening to this, this game was something.
We'll talk about it. Don't worry. We'll get there. Yeah. But Kevin Waugh, since being on the Ducks in 17-18, where he scored 6 goals in 25 games, and those 6 goals probably happened in his first 6 games, then played 3 games of the Ducks the following season, then played in the AHL for 3 years, then played in Sweden and Finland, and then is now playing in Austria. So
good for him still finding that dream.
He's progressively gone down in quality of league, but he's still playing. He's still getting paid money to play hockey. Yeah. So he's doing fine.
Yeah.
On that note, today's game, Ducks versus Canadiens, the Crash the Pond Super Bowl, you might call it. For some reason, it just hits different when it's the Canadiens visiting at Honda Center. I don't know why, but the Canadiens-Ducks games in Montreal don't feel the same to me. They don't feel as high stakes as these ones do.
I wonder if it's because you used to go to a bunch of these games when you lived down here also.
Yeah, I think I've been to multiple Ducks-Canadiens games at Honda Center. So, yeah, it's been a rough place for the Canadiens, and today was no different because the Ducks won 3-2, and it was an interesting game. I mean, before we get into we're just going to go through the game period by period, but going into this game, some lineup decisions, some lineup changes. all of which were kind of spurred by the fact that Troy Terry was out due to illness. And so I'm just going to read off the lineup for people who didn't pay attention to this. But the first line, so Trevor Zegras took Troy Terry's winger spot on the first line next to Strom and Vetrano. So you have Zegras, Strom, Vetrano. Then Mason McTavish gets shifted over to the wing. So back on the wing with Leo Carlsson and Alex Killorn, which I don't hate because that's a spot that I've kind of wanted to see him, play in. Also, that being said, he's been playing really well lately at center. But anyway, moving on down, and then Fabry, Lundestrom, Leeson as your third line, which for all intents and purposes is a fourth line. And then the actual fourth line, Cutter Gauthier with Jansen Harkins and Ross Johnston. And then on the blue line, Lacombe Gudis, Olin Zellweger back in the lineup, making his long-awaited return next to Trouba, and then Dumoulin Hellison, and then Lucas Dostal in net. So, Jake, your thoughts on this lineup?
Oh, boy. Crack knuckles emoji or crack knuckles meme right now, because when I saw this, I was not too happy at all. Troy Terry being out obviously throws a wrench in things with having an illness. But when you look at this, my frustration overall is that I agree. I think Mason McTavish next to Carlson and Killorn seems like the right call. I think that's where Mason McTavish should probably be. I think putting him on the wing is the right situation. The frustration that I have, though, and this is more of a global thing, is you have two guys that were drafted in the top 10 in the last, 5 years. And they were drafted as centers. And they are playing on the wing in this game.
Neither is a center right now.
Neither is playing as a center. Talk about, I get putting Mason McTavish on the wing. I think that's a good call. But why is Trevor Zegras still on the wing? Why is this... And this is, I guess, where we'll get to at the end of the game. But it's frustrating to see these kind of decisions rewarded with wins. But why is Ryan Strome being a center more important than Trevor Zegras? Why is that something that this coaching staff has decided outside of just simply what they'll claim as that line was clicking? Why they kept Terry together. But that line is no longer a thing. Troy Terry is not on that line. Why not have, this is a very minute criticism, and I get it. But it's just an overall thought process criticism that frustrates me, that why is Trevor Zegras the one on the wing here? Why not pivot Ryan Strome to the wing? We have Greg Cronin this season saying that Trevor Zegras is a number one center. Why is he not the one playing center between these guys when Ryan Strome can play the wing? It just doesn't make sense to me where this prioritization is coming from. Why are you not trying to put guys in a spot to thrive? And Ryan Strome is the guy that can play the wing. And it's not as if he plays better as a center. His numbers are not great this year.
I mean, Ryan Strome is basically like a winger center.
Yeah, 100. They rely on Troy Terry to basically pick up the pieces in the defensive zone. Mm-hmm. And so frustration on that part. Other frustration is, I don't know if you saw this, but the reason that Cutter Gauthier was put with the Harkins and Johnston is that Greg Cronin wanted to have a shutdown line to go up against Nick Suzuki with Robbie Fabry, Isaac Lundestrom, and Brett Leeson.
Oh, okay. I did not hear that. I heard that, but I didn't really think about it very much. And yeah, continue.
Isaac Lundestrom is the only player on that line. Let's just say, scrape off any of my criticism of the fact of why are we putting together shutdown lines in 2025? Mm-hmm. Why is that something that we're focusing on? And this will get to later criticism of the Ducks coaching staff, and something I've kind of settled on a little bit. But why are we if you do want to put together a shutdown line, if that is your criteria, Isaac Lundestrom is the only player on that line that would be considered a shutdown forward. And and there's Marc-Andre Muriel is putting in our YouTube chat at work, though.
Well, I was going to interject that the Ducks did win the game,
and that's where I was gonna go, is that all these criticisms may fall on I don't know,
deaf
ears. There we go. I was gonna say false ears. Fall on deaf ears because the Ducks won this game, but this is like when they had that 4 or 5 streak, right? And I'd come out and said I wasn't really happy with how they played. I thought that if they were buying into the way that they were playing, that was going to lead to a lot of failure in the future. And then they go on that road trip and have all of those losses as a result of that. And this game really felt like that to me, where the Ducks didn't play this great game. This lineup that Cronin put together generated under 1 expected goal at 5-on-5. This lineup that he created, while yes, Montreal didn't create a whole lot at 5-on-5 either, they did get pounced upon in all situations. And the Ducks realistically probably should have lost this game. And so I think good on the Ducks for having opportunistic goal scoring, having great goaltending in this game. But from the long-term perspective of this team, the thought process that is going into this lineup and going into what is happening here is not going to lead to long-term success. This is all my opinion. I could be wrong. Who knows? And so to see these decisions be rewarded with wins feels a lot like that 4 or 5 streak that happened, where they kind of look back on that even now and say we need to get back to how we played them. But they didn't play that great during that stretch, and they didn't play that great in this game. And this lineup wasn't set up for the Ducks to succeed necessarily either. And putting together a defensive group of Robbie Fabry, Lundestrom, and Leeson to be your shutdown line, like, Robbie Fabry is not good defensively. Brett Leeson is not the best defensively. Isaac Lundestrom is the only one that's good defensively in that group. So just from the overall thought process, it's just not great.
Yeah, I mean, I think my big issue is just you have this fantastic opportunity to put Trevor Zegras back at center, and I'm sure their thought process is, well, he's been playing wing, Strom and Vetrano have been together, we don't want to change things too much, so we're just going to kind of do this mild moving around of the pieces because maybe they didn't anticipate being without Terry today. But the reasoning to then, take Cutter Gauthier off of the third line, put him on the fourth line. The thing with Cutter Gauthier is that he's capable of playing on a shutdown line. I mean, I would argue he's a better defensive player than Robbie Fabry at this juncture in his career.
He 100% is.
And
he's better than Brett Leeson defensively also.
To Greg Cronin's credit, just to play devil's advocate, but also this is just the facts. Like, the Suzuki line for the Habs today did not have a great game, and like just looking at the numbers, when Lundestrom was out there, they basically played them to a draw at 5-on-5. So they accomplished their mission. They kept them off the board,
and that's why I'm saying this may fall on deaf ears, and I fully admit that.
I think that the rationale is not one that I would condone, but at the same time, it did work. And so how much of that is, the Canadiens versus the Ducks, we'll get into that. But let's go through this game.
We should touch on the blue line also real quick.
Zellweger back in.
While I'm just throwing everything out there. Yes, great that Olin Zellweger's back in. He deserves to be back in the lineup. He is someone that really drives things. You look at the quotes that Greg Cronin had. It sounds like it's very perplexing that he has not been in the lineup more. But Pavel Mintyukov is the one that comes out. And I just don't get it. I don't get why. I know why. So I know why Drew Helleson is staying in. He's a right-hand defenseman. They want to have their righty-lefty matchups. And while, yes, earlier in the season I had said Drew Helleson should be playing at this point, and I stand by that, he should be playing, though, over one of Gudas or Trouba. He is, at this point, probably a 6th defenseman. He should not be playing over Pavel Mintyukov, who could potentially be a number 1 defenseman on this team. Like, that to me is the error here with this blue line. And it's a shame. It's a shame that one of Pavel Mintyukov or Olin Zellweger has been scratched so much.
Yeah, but it was good to see Zellweger back in.
Agreed.
And he played 6 games in January. The Ducks played 15 games, so he played less than half the games. Not great. Cronin came out and said, hey, basically talking him up, saying that they want him to play more, which was just kind of confusing because it's like, well, you can play him more. No one's stopping you from playing him more, but there are dynamics at play, which I think interfere with him playing. So getting into the first period of this game, though, I thought that the first period was a very poor period for the Ducks. I thought that after watching that first period, I thought that the Ducks were en route to getting blown out. They were down 2-0. The Canadiens were just controlling the Canadiens, most notably, were getting really quality scoring chances off the rush. Alex Newhook got a great chance. Nick Suzuki's line was controlling. Hudson dangling at the blue line.
Cole Caulfield had a great 2-on-1 shot that he got that sorry, I need to focus on this briefly. Radko Gudas goes for a hip check. I think it was on Slavkovsky, and goes for a hip check on a 2-on-1 when there's a trailer on Slavkovsky.
Oh, yeah.
And leaves Cole Caulfield on the backside wide open for a one-timer. And Lucas Osal just plays it perfectly, but just could not have played that 2-on-1 worse from Radko.
Well, that's the thing, is that on that 2-on-1, Slavkovsky's on his backhand, sets up Caulfield for a great chance, and Dostal made a fantastic save. Gallagher also had a chance. And so the Canadiens also, like, Jake Evans had a really good deflection chance, and Lucas Dostal was just standing on his head. Like, he was tremendous in that first period, and the Ducks were just lifeless. I mean, I couldn't really explain it. Like, I know that the Canadiens have been the better team this season, but the Ducks just came out like just completely flat, and they end up getting a power play, which just ends up being a goal against, where Jackson Lacombe really misjudges his gap at the offensive blue line. Jake Evans just pokes it past him really easily, turns into a 2-on-1, and Yoel Armia scores. And it just felt like, man, they just cannot do anything right in this period.
Well, it just felt like, they were getting dominated both at 5-on-5. The Habs had all the chances, and then goes to a special team situation, and the Ducks also, like, that was one of the worst power plays I think the Ducks have had this season. And then they take a penalty, and Montreal ends up scoring. I think it was a 5-on-5 goal technically. I can't recall if it was a power play goal or 5-on-5, but still, it was not a good start to this game.
Yeah, it was not a good start. And what was interesting is I was watching the Canadiens broadcast, and there was a play on that power play where the Ducks got scored against, where Trevor Zegras had this opportunity where he kind of did a fake slap shot in the slot, but then kind of just changed his mind at the last second and just fumbled the pass. And Craig Button had this interesting comment where he basically said, like, I know that they're happy with his overall game, but you have to be careful about basically allowing a player to use their instincts and to play off of their own offensive instincts. And maybe he saw that play and thought, he's just kind of lost right now. And I think that play was not a great reflection of how Zegras has been this season. But at the same time, I think it's a pretty spot on comment that, well, yes, it's great that Trevor Zegras has gotten better as a back checker and as a guy without the puck and protecting the puck and all of that. At the end of the day, you drafted Trevor Zegras to be a point per game guy. Yeah. And he's been well below that. He's first off never been there, but now feels like he's moving away from it. It feels like he's moving away from even being a 60-point guy. And it's just interesting because I feel like I have not heard people in the mainstream really talk about Zegras that way. And I think that that's kind of something we've talked about, where it's like, at the end of the day, you need Trevor Zegras to be like a true top 6 point getter.
Well, yeah, and it ends up being a situation of, okay, what are you going to believe from this? Is this a Trevor Zegras taking a step back from being a multiple season 60-point guy under a previous coach? Are you going to believe that it is his talent and he just is not that guy actually, and those were flashes in the pan? Or if this is a situation where a coach comes in that really focuses on something different and that impacts his ability to create offense? To me, the latter is way more of a likely situation here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Button he had some great lines. He was like,
I love Craig Button.
He was pointing out the fact that almost all Ducks players are struggling offensively, and how you need them to come through for this rebuild to take off. And I was like, wow, it's like he's listened to the podcast or something. Yeah. But anyway, and then the Ducks eventually, the Habs then go on the power play. They score. Christian Dvorak gets left wide open in the slot, and that makes it 2-0. But then, the turning point of the game. Ross Johnston and Arbor Jacki get into a fight, and it was kind of a fake fight. Like, Arbor Jacki answered the bell, but then was kind of realized pretty quickly that he was outmatched, and so he was trying to, like, just get Johnston to the ground. And again, I'm going to talk about Craig Button, but Craig Button was just lighting up Jack Eye after that. He was basically saying, what is the point of that fight? You're up 2-0. Why give the Ducks any energy at all? And he was like just going off on him. And I can't say I disagreed. Like, I don't know what the point of that fight was. And I guess the Ducks broadcast was crediting that fight as the turning point in the game.
The players, I guess, did also. They gave Ross Johnston the hard hat in the locker room.
Oh, man. Yeah,
anyone
so there
out
you go.
there anyone out there that has listened to this podcast for a long time knows my opinion on all of this. But to reinforce it one more time, I have a very hard time believing that a fight that happened at the end of the first period and then going like a bad period, going through the intermission, ignited this team to eventually come out and play better in the second period. I think that probably what happened was them getting off the ice, them having a coach go over stuff with them was much more significant. And just for anyone out there that's wondering why I have this opinion, there's a whole lot of data out there that shows that fights really there's no spike in anything after a fight.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's something you can pretty easily track.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to.
Yeah.
So
like,
but the players said it. The players claimed they felt
that's
it.
great. The players said it. I can't, like, I'm not one of those guys. I can't speak for them. I can't speak for if it helped them with motivation. I just personally do have a hard time believing that in some ways that you have an intermission that happened and that went off. And
well, what's really funny is that right after that, Trevor Zegras takes a terrible high sticking penalty.
Oh yeah, there's that.
That was one of the dumbest penalties I think I've seen.
Yeah.
Just period.
Yep.
End of story. Like just trying to lift the stick at the face off, completely misses, tags Josh Anderson in the face. I think chipped one of his teeth. So not great. But then what was interesting is that the Canadiens' power play was actually really bad after that, and Jackson Lacombe actually got a pretty nice shorthanded chance. And just Jackson Lacombe at the end of that period had two really nice sequences where he's just carrying the puck up ice and creating plays. So although the Ducks had a really brutal 17-ish minutes of this period, they kind of ended on a higher note. Maybe it was because of the fight. We'll never know. And then we go into the second period, and I thought that, again, this was a period where the Ducks didn't look that great, especially early. The Canadiens go on the power play again because of a boarding penalty by Harkins, which was just another very dumb penalty. I mean, yeah. I think it was Armia.
Numbers out.
Was it Armia? I can't remember, but it's just clearly turned, and he just like leaps into the guy's back. Like, that's just not smart. And then on that ensuing power play, Lucas Dostal made two just fantastic saves. I mean, Slavkovsky gets a perfect tip in front. Gallagher gets a great chance in front. And again, at that point, it's 2-0. And like Lucas Dostal is basically the reason it's still 2-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just reciting.
You have a whole lot more notes. For anyone out there wondering, Felix has a lot of notes on this game, took notes. I was at the game with my 2.5-year-old son, so I'm going purely off memory here of having a 2.5-year-old on my lap during that.
I am also going to relay. I'm just going to relay more Craig Button takes because he was spitting the whole game.
Let's go.
But he said that he was talking about Leo Carlsson.
Okay.
And the Four Nations face-off.
Okay.
And he basically said Leo Carlsson shouldn't play at the Four Nations, that he should firmly be Sweden's 13th forward, that his game just isn't there right now based on his play this year. Like, he was very adamant that Carlsson has just not, like, in a best on best against Canada, USA, like, Carlsson just shouldn't play. And I found that fascinating because, again, these are takes that you don't really hear out in the mainstream, certainly not in Duck circles.
I don't disagree if you're evaluating the play of all the players this year. I don't think that you can state, looking at that Sweden roster, that Leo Carlsson should play over any of those guys. The question becomes, from a long-term perspective for Sweden, like, Leo Carlsson is probably going to be one of the main drivers for that Sweden international team going forward. And so they probably want to get him experience in international tournaments, even if it's in a lower lineup perspective. So I think purely based on merit, he should not be playing, but if it's something where they're looking for a long-term perspective, he would likely be playing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with him. Look at Sweden's roster. Like, who deserves to be sitting right now instead of Leo Carlsson on that team? I mean, maybe he'll play against like Finland because Finland is like losing players by the day. But I can't really disagree with that. And also, zooming out here a little bit, it's funny because Leo Carlsson picked up 2 assists today, and I don't feel like that reflects what he actually did on the ice. Like I don't think he was that good today. Do you have any thoughts on Leo Carlsson's game today?
I thought he was fine. I thought having Mason McTavish on his wing helped a lot. I think getting a guy like that can transport the puck. I think it just puts him in a better position to do things when you have a Mason McTavish there. I think in the lead up, eventually we'll get to it. Might as well get to it now. Of the first goal, he is the one that breaks into the zone that gets into the zone, and that eventually sets up that goal. There's a whole lot more that happens prior to that, but he ends up entering the zone with the puck and gets it in there to set up everything.
Yeah, basically what happened is that there were two shifts in a row where the Ducks managed to control in the Canadian zone, led by the Zegras and Carlson lines, and it was extended zone time, but everything was really to the outside, and eventually it breaks through. And you have the Mason McTavish goal where Alex Killorn just kind of peels off the half wall, has all the time in the world, and rips it on net, and McTavish deflects it, and there's just nothing. No goalie is stopping that deflection.
One thing I want to mention on that play also is that the person that was up in the zone to be able to create a turnover when the puck had actually turned over to the Canadiens, I think Lane Hudson had it. It was Olin Zellweger that had jumped up into the play. And that's not something that a Drew Helleson does necessarily. That's not something. I mean, Pavel Minchkov does do that also, but that is what you have to have in the modern day NHL is guys that can jump up and do that as a defender and can get up and activate off of specific plays. And so I think that getting Olin Zellweger up there and he's creating that turnover and it leads to a goal against. Like that is why he should be in this lineup, is that type of offensive creativity and ability from the blue line that he brings, because you can't just have your offense be driven by forwards in the NHL anymore.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think Greg Cronin has specifically said that, like, or a player or someone on the team has said their system relies on aggressive defensemen at the blue line, at the offensive blue line. Like that's a big part of their style. And I mean, I'm just going to say it right now. I thought Drew Helleson looked very blah today. I think he's looked very blah the last few games, and it's not necessarily meant as an insult. It's just that he's a sixth defenseman. He doesn't really bring a lot. Like, I just don't understand why he is. I mean, I understand why he's a fixture in the lineup because he's quote unquote stable. He's right-handed. You can just, like, it's very easy to justify keeping him there. But I just think you're leaving money on the table at times with him out there. Like, he's just a very simple player, I guess. And that's not a bad thing. It's just he's not a player you need to be playing every game.
We're kind of going all over the place here, but I want to bring this up also. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of this out there of, well, once Dumoulin is traded, that will be resolved. It will be fine.
It'll help quite a bit.
Sure. My issue there is that, well, he should have been traded 3 weeks ago. This has been a known issue for a while, and eventually this does fall on Pat Verbeek that this is his creation right here, and that Brian Dumoulin does have to play because you don't want to scratch Brian Dumoulin because that will hurt his trade value. But at a certain point, trade him. Trade him, and whatever you get in return, is it worth the haggling to get a third instead of a fourth round pick, just so that you can have him or to get a third over a fourth? Or is it better to just get that fourth and let these guys play? Stop all this stuff. Stop having Olin Zellweger playing 6 games of 16. Like, it's just dumb overall. So like, that to me is the frustration here of, like, yes, I see people saying once Dumoulin is traded, this is not going to be an issue. And yes, that is correct. But he's still on this team. Like, if that's been the case since they acquired Jacob Trouba.
I don't disagree at all. But anyway, so the Ducks score. Mason McTavish continues his hot streak. He's at 7 goals in 6 games. So regardless of what you think about McTavish, he is producing right now. He he is doing his part, and I think that that's a really positive thing that can't really
Sure.
that just can't go unmentioned. And then the Ducks followed up again. They tie it up, and a clever kind of quick decision pass by Trevor Zegras allows for a zone entry by Ryan Strome. David Savard looked awfully old and slow, but I'll leave that aside. And then just horrible defending by Kirby Dach and Frank Vetrano. Looking at it again is giving me whiplash, but I'll fight through it. Frank Vetrano is left wide open in the slot, and I mean he makes no mistake. Tie game, and in a period where it didn't really feel like either team was that great, the Ducks just kind of find these little openings, and all of a sudden you go into the third period, and it's a brand new game. Also, should point out that in that second period, I thought that Alex Killorn did some really good things on the penalty kill. Like his ability to recover possession, hold on to the puck, delay, just kind of eat it on the wall. We'll get to him. I mean, I guess we've already kind of gotten to him because he's the one who had the assist in the McTavish goal, but he had a really, really good game today. I thought that he was the Ducks' best forward. Yeah. I think that's fair to say.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think overall the way I viewed this period is that the Ducks had a nice flurry there in the middle of the second that ended up with them getting these 2 goals, but it was in some ways opportunistic goal scoring. And I think that, not saying that they didn't get to good locations because these were really good shots with good chances, things like that, but you're not going to bury every grade A chance that you get. And so it's great that they did, and that got them the situation, but that is not necessarily how it always works, I guess, is where I'm going. I'm trying to figure out how to word this fully. And on the flip side of that, the Ducks did get great goaltending. Yeah. And so they got the great goaltending, and they had the timely goal scoring in this period.
Yeah, and then in the third period, they started off on the power play, and one thing that I just love to see, one thing that I will not stop talking about is the fact that Trevor Zegras was on the left flank on the power play on his forehand side, and Mason McTavish was on his off wing on the right face-off circle.
Yep.
And Trevor Zegras zipped a pass right through the Habs penalty killers, and Mason McTavish just kind of shanked it. He wasn't able to get a clean shot off, but that synergy is there. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say this, but Trevor Zegras is a great passer. Mason McTavish is a great shooter. This needs to be a part of the power play equation. It just has to be.
I mean, even on the flip side of that, put them on a line together. Let Zegras center Mason McTavish.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? Why the hell not?
Yeah.
You've got some good takes today.
Love it.
And then I thought that, again, just throughout that period, it just became more and more clear that, Jackson Lacombe was playing really, really well. Alex Killorn was also playing really, really well. And eventually, Alex Killorn is the one who scores the game-winning goal. Just a really nice play. I mean, arguably really poor defending, but again, I'll set that aside. Gets into the zone, gets a bunch of space given to him, walks it in, just goes far side on Montembeault, and that is basically all she wrote. I mean, the Ducks got some big saves down the stretch from Lucas Dostal that the Habs kind of woke up in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Once they realized, oh shit, we're letting our season just kind of slip away, they realized maybe we should start attacking again. Bit of score effects as well. But Dostal just came up big time after time, shot after shot. And yeah, I mean, all in all, the Ducks just kind of sleptwalked through the first period, gradually clawed their way back into it, and did just enough, maybe even more than enough to win this game. I think that even though, yes, there are problems with some of the process and the lineup decisions and all of that, I think that seeing Mason McTavish pick up another goal, seeing Trevor Zegras pick up an assist, Leo Carlsson double assist, like and Lucas Dostal another great game, even though the raw number of saves, I think, kind of undersells how good he was. These are still positive things for the Ducks, small and big picture.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. I think you are a little bit more rosy on this from the Ducks side of it than I am overall. I
mean, these are like objectively good things.
Sure. No. I 100% agree.
How you decide to weigh them versus the bad is...
Exactly.
That's the difference.
So, yes, I think that these are objectively good things. I think Mason McTavish continuing to score is a very good thing. I think Trevor Zegras starting to find his game. I think he should definitely put it center for that to happen a bit more. And Leo Carlson looking better. I think that, Olin Zellweger finding a way to impact the game. All these things are definitely good things. On the flip side of that, though, from the downside perspective, they kind of did nothing from a 5-on-5 perspective. And then when you're looking at the Ducks power play, yes, they did have some good looks, but overall wasn't good enough from that perspective. And then from the shorthanded perspective, they had a couple of nice kills due to Alex Killorn, but Lucas Dostal had to really stand tall. And to me, the story of this game kind of was the story of the season so far, which is that the Ducks were able to find ways to score goals. They kind of were able to get goals past a goaltender, maybe who was not able to make the big save, and they were able to get all the big saves from their own goaltender. And so a little bit of variance, a little bit of shooting luck going the Ducks' way, and that's kind of been the story of the season for this team overall, is that they're winning these games when it's a tight game, or winning or getting points of games going to overtime, but that's kind of it for them. They're really having to rely on these variance type of situations. And so to me, this game was just kind of more of the same from this season, where the Ducks weren't really utterly dominant in the game. They didn't look that great, but they found a way to win. And to some people out there, me saying that might be something where they may say, great, that's what we want. We want a team that is going to find a way to win. That's what you need. You need to learn how to win games, all that type of good stuff. And while I don't necessarily disagree, I think that there is a right and a wrong way to win games. Because I think when you win games like this and get these types of habits reinforced, then that reinforces bad habits as how you win games. And that doesn't lead to long-term success. And kind of that goes back to what my issue was with the 4 or 5 streak that they had, was that these things that were concerns were being overlooked or brushed to the side because they won. And that's how this game kind of felt to me.
Yeah, I think that at no point in this game did it feel like the Ducks were really controlling the game, even when they were playing better.
And let me ask you this, because you were in a very unique spot watching this game as a Canadiens fan.
Yes.
And this is not me rubbing it in. This is not me trying to do anything like that.
Sure.
But I don't think the Canadiens played a great game.
No.
Like, this was a game where if the Ducks had played well, they should have dominated the Canadiens from a 5-on-5 perspective. Like, so let me rephrase that slightly. Not the current iteration with the current coaching staff. But if this was a well-coached team with the current team, that with how the Canadiens played, the Ducks should have been able to dominate the 5-on-5 game with how it went. And so, even though they won this game, this was not even close to how it should have looked, probably, for the Ducks with how the Canadiens played. Do you kind of get what I'm getting at?
Well, I'll just lay it out. So I think that I think the one big thing that altered this game is that in the first period, the Canadiens were able to get quality open looks off the rush and even off the cycle. And that basically disappeared after the first period. And I do think that, I haven't gone back and studied it, but the Ducks adjusted. The Ducks did something, right? The Ducks tightened up their defensive game, and that is a good indicator for winning. The problem is, like you were alluding to, the Ducks offensively are just not a team that controls puck possession. They don't create really scoring chances reliably. And the stats don't lie. The Ducks have the fewest goals scored in the NHL. This is not a good offensive team despite the talent.
And I want to mention this part of that because this is I think a nice segue. Because is there anything else you want to talk about with this game specifically? Because something I wanted to bring up from an overall stat thing that we realized this week, but wanted to let you touch on anything else with the game.
I'm just sad. I'm sad. I thought the Canadiens, this was kind of a gotta have it game for the Canadiens, and they just kind of barfed it away.
Yeah.
And I know what you were saying about how the Canadiens deserve to win, but
the deserve to win meter had the Canadiens winning.
Knowing what I know about the Ducks and seeing how the Canadiens just failed to ever really take control of the game after the first period, it was just a failure to me.
Well, I think probably what's frustrating from your perspective is you've seen how poor the Ducks can look and how teams can capitalize on it, and the fact that the Canadiens weren't able to continue that.
Not at all. I mean, Patrick Laine got benched in the third period, which is kind of shocking. But that's almost $9 million just sitting on your bench. But anyway, yeah, it was sad. It was sad for me, but I'm sure some people will take joy in my sadness. So there you go. I'm bringing joy to the world.
There are definitely those people out there, but I am sorry.
Yeah.
So
you were gonna say.
yes. So what I was gonna say was, so you and I don't really look at NHL Edge at all. It's something that I think you and I both know is there, but none of the numbers really matter too much from what the Ducks put up there. But one of the interesting things overall is they do have zone time or zone percentage. Like how much of the game
actual possession.
Like how much of the game do you spend in your own zone, in the neutral zone, or in the offensive zone? And while I still think there's a whole lot of studies out there that have shown expected goals matter more than zone time, because even if you're in the offensive zone more, if you're not generating looks, it doesn't really matter as much. But I think it is still a useful tool because you can look at where a team is at and how much time they spend, and it allows you to really assess kind of what's happening from the expected goal side. So I kind of took a look at it, and this season the Ducks are currently in their defensive zone 43.3% of the time. League average is 39.9. That is a step back from last season where they were at 42.1%. League average was 39.8. And they are teetering close to the 22-23 defensive numbers of 43.6. And Zach Kavanaugh of the Sporting Tribune actually took the time, because the frustrating part with NHL Edge,
they're not ranked.
First off, they're not ranked. Second off, there's no way to look up a table of everyone's thing because, like you said, they're not ranked. So he went and logged every single team's numbers and went to each one.
That's hilarious.
The Ducks are last in the league in defensive zone time at 43.3%. The Blue Jackets are 31st at 42.4%. The Ducks are last in offensive zone time also at 38.7%.
Well,
so the Ducks are spending the most amount of time in the defensive zone out of any team in the league this season, and the least amount of time in the offensive zone out of any team in the league this season. And that lines up with the expected goal numbers when we bring them up to you, that the Ducks are sitting 31st in the league. And so I guess kind of where I want to go with this is that some people may look at the wins and losses for this team and the record for this team.
7 points out.
That I think they're 9 points out now.
Well,
if Calgary,
it's going to be
Calgary
9.
Win?
No, it's not over.
Okay, but it's going to be 9 points out. And yes, they're winning these games that they're finding ways to win. But the overall way they're playing is a step back. Like, they're on par with what they did in 22-23. They just have better goaltending. Like, it's honestly that simple.
They have two great goaltenders. Yep.
They have two great goaltenders. They're offensively starved because they're spending so much time in the defensive zone. It's really hard to create offense when you're not in the offensive, when you're stuck in the defensive zone that much and not in the offensive zone as much as other teams. And I think back, honestly, actually, to a quote from Pat Verbeek. And maybe it's not a direct quote. Maybe I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. But it was when he fired Dallas Eakins at the end of the 22-23 season. And it was something along the lines of, like, it's really hard for your offensive players to develop offensively when they're stuck in the defensive zone so much.
Yeah.
And it's really weird to look at that quote and look at the numbers now being on par with that team. And it makes me wonder what, like, if, this is a big if Pat Verbeek does bring back Greg Cronin for next season, what is he seeing that is different? Is it literally just a, like, compete level thing and that's all that matters? But the overall numbers are the same. Like, this is the NHL number for zone time. Like, this is, like, not a, like, proprietary, like, a public model that someone's putting together with expected goal. This is the NHL data, track data for where the puck is at.
There's chips in the players' jerseys. There's
chips in the puck.
Like, this is very refined. There's no disputing this.
Yeah. So it's just like a frustration on my part of, yes, you can look at the record. Yes, you can look at the points. But the overall underlying process from the public models and then also from just looking at the zone time, it's not improving.
Well, and if you'll recall, like with the SportLogic data, which is the proprietary data that it's a provider that a lot of I think all NHL teams use to some degree, and then they have their own databases. But like The Ducks give up the worst amount of slot shots against, the high danger inner slot shots. So I think that you raise an interesting point, because if Paverbeek had that belief at the time, and you hear Greg Cronin talk about the kids and how, I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that he basically said he just doesn't coach offense, but I'll leave that aside for now. But it's like, oh, the kids are learning these habits of defending and playing hard and playing strong, and the team is finding ways to win. I guess, how much does that matter when, and this is, I mean, I don't know how to say this without sounding negative, but how much do those things matter when literally everything that you can measure is bad? This team scores the fewest amount of goals. They spend the most time in their defensive zone of any team. They spend the least amount of time attacking. They give up chances. They don't create chances. They have a bad power play. They have bad special teams. The kids are regressing offensively. Do those things that Greg Cronin and Paverbeek talk about, of growing habits and blah blah, is that enough to overlook everything else? Like, are we going crazy here? Because there's just no indication that this team is getting better. And you talk about the standings points, and like you said, it's all goaltending. That is the difference. That there is nothing else about this team that is driving standings points outside of goaltending.
And even with how the team is being used, right? Like, look at who's being put in these like prime roles defending a lead. Like, they have Jacob Trouba paired with Brian Dumoulin. They reunite that at the end of a game to be able to try to defend the lead. And so it's just like, okay, I think back, and I bring this up so much, but it's just such a frustrating thing, is I think back to when Elliot Friedman had mentioned before the season about the Ducks and Cam Fowler like coming to an agreement that he should probably be moved, and the actual quote was something along the lines of, it was to get the younger players, the young left-hand shot defensemen, put in premium spots to play elevated minutes and be in these pivotal situations, basically. Mm-hmm. Jackson Lacombe's the only one that's getting that.
Yeah.
Like, Olin Zellweger's not doing that. Olin Zellweger played 16 minutes tonight.
Which is
Pavel Mintyukov,
fine.
Like,
yeah.
It's fine, but like he was taken off the ice in a 1-goal lead. Like, this is not like what you want to do. I mean, Cutter Gauthier took 2 5-on-5 shifts in the second period there.
Cutter Gauthier played 8 minutes tonight.
Yeah.
I think that we haven't really talked about that, but I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. And again, it just goes to this bigger theme that we've talked about, which is that Greg Cronin and, I mean, Pat Verbeek is part of this. Like, you can't just divorce Pat Verbeek from what's going on, but they've allowed the situation to where the veterans and scratching out points are being prioritized over letting these kids get the reps and being the ones to kind of live and die with their mistakes. And I think that the way Pat Verbeek probably views it is that, well, this team has to learn how to win, and on a winning team, nobody is handed anything. And so just because you were drafted 9th overall or 3rd overall or 10th overall, it doesn't matter. You have to earn your ice, and you have to show that you're a driver of success. And like, that's a great, like, that sounds great as a philosophy, or maybe it sounds great to some people, but I personally just don't think it really matters. The guys just have to play. They have to learn by playing. That's how they're going to learn. You can accelerate that. You can skip the philosophy and just get to the part where they learn. I think that that's what matters more. And so, as depressed as I am about the Canadiens losing today and potentially now slipping out of the race, like, the kids on that team are logging the most minutes. They are playing a shit ton. And that's ultimately, that's what this is all about, is like that for these teams, for the Canadiens, for the Ducks to eventually be cup contenders. You need your kids to eventually become your stars. And as Craig Button was talking about, and as we've talked about for this team this season, like, it's gone in the other direction. And as great as it is that Trevor Zegras is rounding out his game, as great as it is that Maybe Leo Carlson has gotten stronger. It just doesn't matter if they're not scoring.
I want to bring up this pet, not even a pet theory, but my what I'm thinking overall, the coaching staff, how they view hockey overall. And this is kind of what I was mentioning when bringing up the shutdown line. Because first off, that's a very Randy Carlyle thing. I want to mention that. I think that we should start really using Randy Carlyle when we're talking about Greg Cronin here, seeing as he is someone that was an assistant coach for Randy Carlyle, spoke glowingly about him when he was hired by the Ducks. But one thing I'm starting to kind of realize here when he talks about the team and talks about how they play and talks about all this stuff is that I think it's starting to become apparent that the way that he views defense is this almost the antiquated way of being in good defensive position in their own zone and not necessarily trying to cause turnovers, if that makes sense. That, like, I think overall the way the league has gone and where things are at, and even the numbers we look at, defense is essentially the absence of shots against. Well, it's the absence of spending time in your own zone. That is good defense, is not being in your own zone and going into the other zone. But I think the way that Greg Cronin views it is defense is about keeping guys to the outside and not and doing that, which ends up leading to more time in your own zone. And it's almost this antiquated view of viewing defense in the NHL.
Well, it's also, I think that there's just not really much thought to controlling the game. Because at the end of the day, what you want to be doing is imposing your will on the other team. And if your first, I mean, as Greg Cronin calls it, if your value system, if your food chain, if at the top of your food chain, it's about defending, then you're already on the back foot. You're not thinking about how you can control the game. And the best teams, they're the ones that dominate. They don't dominate by thinking we're going to sit back and defend and then go attack. And so, I mean, it's a very antiquated view, but hell, he had the quote the other day about Minchikov about how, you know, they want to increase defense in his value system and make sure that that's something that he prioritizes the most. I think that he literally said, I'll just read the quote. He said, "I've got to be honest with you. I don't really focus on his offense because that's going to come naturally. I try to focus on his defensive awareness and his commitment to be good, his commitment to be on the good side of puck battles." And it's like, yeah, that's well and good. Defense is important. You have to be able to defend at some point. But yeah, offense isn't just this like throwaway thing that's just going to come naturally. Like, there are ways to get better offensively. Well, every NHL player, I'm pretty confident every single NHL player has a personal skills coach that watches their tape during the season, that does drills with them in the off season, that teaches them tricks to be better offensively. So this is absolutely something that you can improve. And to kind of just come out and say that I don't really care about that or I don't coach that, it
shows why they have the lowest amount of goals for in the entire league.
It's just concerning to me. It's very concerning because I just don't think that where the NHL is at nowadays, it's not like in the old days where, yeah, you could just coach defense. The old adage is, you're gonna do what I do, you're gonna do what I say as a coach, as an offensive player in the defensive zone, and then in the offensive zone you can do whatever you want. You can run free.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore. You need to have a system for everything because the game is so refined. Everybody is so detailed now. And so to just kind of have offense be an afterthought is very counter to where the game is at. It's not even where the game is going. It's where the game is at.
So War in our YouTube chat says, basically brought up that you just said that players do that in the off season though. But I think a clarifying point is players do that in the offseason on their own for their own individual skills, not from an overall 5-on-5. How do we want to generate offense together? How do I develop this player?
Yeah.
And one thing I want to bring up with Pavel Minchikov specifically is that I think back to his time in junior, right? And I think back to like Mitch Brown, bringing up the fact that when he was with Saginaw, right, they really focused on developing him offensively, working with him, playing almost this like positionless style of hockey that Saginaw had. And then when he went to Ottawa, they kind of refined a bit of his defensive game, but still worked with him offensively. Like, if hockey is as simple as these guys are offensively talented and that's it, then like there would be nothing with development. Like, there would be no such thing as development. Like, there's a reason why development is a thing, why you have to have coaches, why you have to have all that stuff. And so, to me, that's the frustration, is that is what Cronin is paid to do. That is, that is their job.
I mean, again, I have nothing against coaching defense.
Agreed.
That is something you have to do. You have to be able to defend. That is a non-negotiable. But offense isn't just this afterthought. It is something that you can have systems for. It's something that you can have habits for, reads for. Like, this is not something that is just this kind of black box that nobody can touch. And yes, players have their own individual coaches, but like you said, they're developing their own individual skills. You're not developing a team concept when you're dealing with an individual coach. And so you need you need a coach that fosters that. So yes, the Ducks are hovering around NHL 500, and they are higher in the standings than they were the last couple of years. But to be honest, I don't really care about that. The standings to me are just kind of,
there's there.
You know, it's
like,
just
the
just
Ducks
there.
have they have a minus 30 goal differential.
What I care about, and just so we're crystal clear, what I care about is how is the team playing on the ice? How are we seeing these trends develop game in and game out? How are individual performances developing? And then ultimately, how is that reflected in the numbers? I care about the process. The standings I could care less about, because hockey is one of those weird sports where you can win a lot of games but actually have a worse process than you had before. And I think for the Ducks this season, a lot of things have gone in the wrong direction, and yet the standings don't reflect that. In fact, if you were to just look at the standings, you would think the team's actually better than it was. But they're not. They're just not. And I feel like a broken record, but it needs to be said. So,
yep. I don't disagree with anything that you said. So, want to move on to questions or anything else that you want to touch on?
Well, I think that there's probably a sentiment of like, oh, you guys are doom and gloom. You know, you're spending so much time bashing the team. And it's like, I desperately want to point out positives.
Agreed.
I want to uplift this team. And I think that when I get an opportunity to, I do so. Like, Jackson Lacombe has been fantastic. Mason McTavish is having a resurgence, but that doesn't mean that we can just ignore everything else.
And to be clear, for the first 3-4 months of the season,
we were the ones defending this team.
We were defending this team. We had said Cronin he deserves more time at this point to see what can happen, even though they were 31st in the league in expected goals for percentage.
We gave him time.
And we had said, when Fowler was out injured and Drew Hellison came in, it's they were playing good defensively. We were really trying to behind them, wanting them to play well, and really behind a lot of it, pointing out all that stuff. And then at a certain point though, you hit the midway point of the season, and this is just kind of who they are.
Yep.
And they haven't necessarily shown a willingness to change. If anything, they've shown that they're winning in spite of that, and they're believing
they're buying their own hype, which is troubling.
Yes. And so I think that it's important to really point out and in some ways be counter to that, so that people are at least aware of it and that understand that this may not be the way that this team can have long-term success, and that realistically there does need to be change within this franchise still for this team to have success. I think the good thing out there, and to end on a positive before we get to questions, I think that the future is still extremely bright. I don't think any of that is impacted by this season. I don't think any of that is impacted by this season. I think that if you bring in a new coach in the offseason that is more suited for these players.
Going to happen?
I'm saying if a coach is, and I'm trying to be positive here, and you are trying to put a stake in that. But I think it's fixable. I think this is very quickly fixable with the issues that we are seeing here. You let Greg Cronin go. You bring in a different coach. You have the talent here. You move out a Brian Dumoulin. You potentially move out one of Trouba or one of Gudas. Move out one of those guys so that Tristan Luneau can come into the lineup next year. Or I guess you just keep Tristan Luneau in the AHL next year. Either way. But there is a path here. There is a very, very easy path here for the Ducks to be good next year. You just need to have a change made. Ooh, last one left with a very good point though. Does Peter Budaj deserve the MVP for the franchise right now?
Yeah, both goalies have been great.
Yeah.
But I want to piggyback off what you said though, because I think that the biggest positive to me for this rebuild is that the Ducks have drafted a lot of talent. The talent is already almost all at the NHL level. There's a few guys that they're still waiting on, but the talent is there. And despite the horrible coaching and lack of development this season, I still think that all of these guys are capable of still achieving their potential. I think that this season is dangerously close to maybe like hampering them getting to that potential, but I still believe in all of these individual players. The Ducks have drafted very well, and I'm not going to say that's the hardest part, because I think the hardest part is then flipping that into a winning team. But that is a very difficult part of a rebuild, is building a mix that you actually believe in. And I mean, we've seen rebuilds where it's like the team just doesn't draft that well and it just flames out. And so I look at what the Ducks have built, and I think, yes, there is still a lot of optimism that this thing will eventually just get to where it was naturally going to be anyway. It's just that the Ducks are really not making it easy to get there. And so I don't know if Greg Cronin won't be back next season. I genuinely am kind of starting to think he will be the coach for next season. But regardless, there's just so much talent in this team, and there's so much talent that's just going to get better. I mean, you're seeing it with Jackson Lacombe. The guy's hit 24, and he's a stud now. Like, as these guys start to enter their primes, as McTavish, as Zegras, as Carlson, as they all get older and more mature, NHL players just get better in that age range. And so despite all of the crap that we've kind of had to watch this season, I still think that this team is, I'm not really worried like right now about, oh, the rebuild is like screwed. So there's your positive note.
Yeah.
Not screwed. Not
All
screwed.
Right. We're going to get to questions now. So we're going to start with our Patreon exclusive Discord. Go to patreon.com/crashspawned. So we have a question from our good friend, Lisa Derek Lee. Said, would the season be considered a success if the Ducks make the playoffs, even if they make it in just to get swept?
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. If for them to make the playoffs, they would have to be like fundamentally a better team than they are right now. So if they made the playoffs, then, and that were to happen, they really improved their game, then I would think, yeah, this is a good thing. This is a success. But if they get into the playoffs just kind of playing the way they are right now, riding the coattails of their goalies, then I guess it's good for the young players to experience playoff hockey, but I'm not viewing it as this like massive success.
I think it can be both a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the young players to get in, see what it's like to play in the playoffs, realize the difference in that level that's there. Hell, with the goaltending the Ducks have, who knows? But likely they would get swept. But I also think it can be a bad thing if the general manager buys what is happening. Yes. And if the team is buying what's happening there. Because I think you look at, I think a really fascinating juxtaposition to that is the Washington Capitals. And that they made it in on the skin of their teeth last year. They were not a good team. And I think the Capitals, to their credit, did not buy what they were doing last year.
They changed their team completely.
They understood that there needed to be drastic changes to that team, even though they made the playoffs. And so if that is what ends up happening and you realize that and that there still have to be changes, then fine. Like, there's no issue with making it. But if that is not what will happen, and I highly doubt that that would be what would happen if the Ducks made the playoffs, then it would be a negative.
Also, I'm seeing some pushback in the chat that I just kind of want to address. Where it's like, okay, if you don't believe that a coach can destroy the progression of a player, if you think that there's all this development going on that we're not seeing, okay, first off, let's just look at the facts. All of these young players are taking steps back offensively. Their overall play has regressed. And so if their overall play has regressed, if the production isn't there, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because a coach can't destroy a player's development. Then, like, what are we doing here? What is the point of this season? Does just nothing matter? Can just everything be bad and ultimately will not matter? Is it just not worth talking about then? Like, what are we doing here? Right? So that's the thing is like, ultimately, it might not matter. But right now, we can still objectively say this is not good. Right? I mean, that it can be both. It could still end up being fine, and it could also be bad now.
And there's also a way to put them in spots to succeed. Like, I think Trevor Zegras is a great way to look at that, is that this is a player that Greg Cronin even said it himself that he should be a center. Like, he should be the number one center. I mean, Ali Lozoff had the quote of Trevor Zegras saying he hates to play wing.
Is it funny how basically ever since that was said, he's like never played center again?
Yeah. But like somehow he's being put in this spot he's being put on he's on the wing instead of being at center. And so like, yes, I kind of see the same.
I just really like the take of like, oh, well, progress is not linear, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but they're all struggling. So anyway, I'm doing what you do and I engage.
Here we go. Plant Ranch said, who is one player that you think the eye test outperforms the squiggly lines? As in, you think he has a good game, but the expected stats say otherwise.
I think Ryan Strome. Ryan Strome is that player to me, where Ryan Strome's stats are just never great, but I have time for his game. I like the way he plays. I think he's a smart player. And you disagree.
I don't disagree fully. I think he's just in a
way... There it is.
I think he's just in way too elevated of a role.
Yeah, but that's not his fault.
No. I mean, Frank Vetrano is probably a similar one.
Yeah, but I actually don't think Frank Vetrano is that good.
I think he's better than what the numbers show, I guess. But yeah, so let's see. And then he also said, is there an example of the opposite? Someone who you think often plays poorly, but is redeemed by expected stats. I mean, that's kind of Daniel Sprong's life.
Well, I think this season, I think Jackson Lacombe weirdly falls into this category where I think Jackson Lacombe's stats look really, really good and he has played well, but he is still prone to some very disastrous mistakes that happen. I think this week have happened every game with just like a bad read or a mistimed poke check and it leads to a goal against. And we've seen him do that numerous times this season. So I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think that the stats kind of don't let you in on some of his tendencies either.
Hazmat 2015 said, or asked, if Verbeek keeps Cronin after the season, how much does that hurt our ability to sign good free agents? And let's see. And then if the Ducks fire Cronin, how important is it to have hired a new head coach before the free agency signing deadline?
I mean, it could hurt it. I think what hurts the Ducks' ability to sign good free agents is just that they're a bad team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. If the Ducks were a good team, it wouldn't matter who the coach is. Like, I mean, there's a lot of coaches that I'm sure are not loved, but if the team is good, players will go because players want to win. So I don't think it's a huge deal.
Sean 11 said, if Cronin survives the Four Nations break, do you think it increases his chances to stay for a third season?
Oh, I think he's for sure staying the entire season.
Correct.
That is just no longer even a contested issue for me. And then I think he's back next year. I just really have a hard time imagining them firing him after this season.
I mean, we don't know the contract.
We don't know the contract, but it would just be odd for them to have gone through this whole season where there were numerous occasions where they could have justifiably made a change and then just part ways. Like, it just feels like Verbeek is absolutely in lockstep with Greg Cronin.
To answer the question, I don't know if it increases his chances to stay for a third season if he's still here after the Four Nations break.
Because it just doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just kind of independent things.
Yeah. Salami Sandwich asked, for the past handful of wins, is it purely goaltending, or is the team starting to show some improvement that they can build on? If so, what? So it's both, I think.
Well, I think Mason McTavish scoring a lot is helping tremendously.
Correct. I mean, I think in large part, if you look at this stretch, and this is another 4 of 5 stretch, Felix.
That explains everything.
Yeah, but I think the 3 games that they won, I think the Pittsburgh game they played well. They still went up against Nedeljkovic, who is not playing well this season, did not play well in that game.
Seattle.
And then they played Nashville, and UC Saros did not play well in that game. UC Saros is not playing well this season. And there was a goal from like the goal line that Pavel Minchikov scored, right? Like there were just some not great goals.
It was Lacombe. Are you talking about the Seattle game?
No, I'm talking about the Nashville.
Oh, from the goal line. Sorry, I thought you meant something else.
That scored against Saros. And so they're kind of going up against these goalies. They're just spotting them a goal or two. And for this Ducks team, like that's not something they've really had this season. And then, Grubauer did not play well either. And so they played against three subpar goaltenders, went up against a good one in Dustin Wolf, and they only were able to get one by him and they ended up losing that game. And then I don't think Sam Montembeault played a fantastic game today either.
The Flames are also a much better team than the Kraken and the Preds. Like the Ducks just did not generate a ton in those games.
Yeah,
but I think
I think that's overall my thing is I think Pittsburgh, Nashville, they generated offense at least. Like they generated a lot of looks. Seattle, I think they just got lucked out a bit going up against really poor goaltending. Like Grubauer was really, really bad.
He was awful.
Game.
He was awful.
They really didn't generate a whole lot against Calgary. They didn't really generate a whole lot of chances against Montreal. And so I think that overall, I would say this 4 of 5 stretch is a bit of a mirage more than anything else. But I think that there are things that can be built on. I think Mason McTavish finding a way to score goals and finding a way to score with that one-timer on the power play is a very, very good thing. I think Zellweger getting back in the lineup tonight was a good thing, or today was a good thing. But go on, though. What was your question?
Which 4 or 5 stretch are you taking? This one or the one back in December?
Oh,
I think that's an easy answer.
Probably the one back in December, right?
Oh, I would actually disagree because I think that the one in December, yes, they had a nice win against the Devils and against the Oilers, but they were bad for the other. Like they were just straight up bad for the other 3.
Agreed.
I think this stretch at least, like they haven't really been outplayed in any game. Like the games have been weird and all over the place and wide open, especially against Nashville and Seattle, but they haven't been outplayed. Now, part of that is just the competition. Fair. Like in that last 4 or 5 stretch they played, was it Tampa, Edmonton twice? That was
kind of why I was going with that last 4 or 5 because of who they played.
But those games though, they were just getting outplayed completely.
Like to me, I guess the only reason why I would pick that 4 or 5 is the game, the Edmonton and New Jersey game, the Edmonton at home game.
I mean, that was one of their best games of the season.
Yeah, agreed.
So
that's why.
Neither are good.
No, neither are good. I think that's a great way to put it.
8 wins in 10 games, though.
All right, so we got a question on Twitter. Also, we'll get to this from Trevor Zegras. Before we get to Twitch and YouTube, he said, "What are your predictions for contracts for Dostal McTavish?"
What was he? 5 years, $6 million?
Something like that. Let's go with that. Yeah, 5 by 6 for
5 by 6. Yeah.
McTavish, what do you think?
Whatever the goalie for Seattle, who I'm blanking on right now.
Decord,
whatever Decord got, just a little bit more than that.
Okay. McTavish.
So we haven't talked about the NHL salary cap spiking the next 3 years, but should that incentivize the Ducks to go long-term on McTavish? I think the Ducks should go long-term on McTavish. I don't think McTavish will want to go long-term.
Agreed. I think they're going to go bridge.
I think that's ultimately where it's going to land.
Yeah.
So, sure, 2 times 4. I mean, Zegras got 5.75. Zegras got 3 times 5.75, so just assume that maybe it'll be 3, but the cap hit will be lower because McTavish doesn't have the point totals that Zegras had. So.
And he also asked, if the Ducks end the season with 80-plus points with roughly the offensive and defensive numbers as we currently have, do you think that Cronin will be better? Will be brought back? And then he added his opinion. I hope not, but I fear Verbeek will base that decision off of points.
Wait, say that again?
Do you think that basically if the Ducks finish with 80 plus points with roughly the offensive and defensive numbers as they currently have, do you think that Cronin will be brought back?
Yes. 80 plus points. He's come. He is stamp that one home. He is coming back.
Yep. All right. Now time for Twitch and YouTube. Throw your questions in the chat if you want to get your questions in. If you are listening to this on your favorite podcast services, go to twitch.tv/crashthepond, where if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime gaming sub each and every month, and it does help out more than you can imagine. And it is completely free to you. You get special emotes in the chat, special badges next to your name. If you also are listening to this on your favorite podcast services, you can find us at youtube.com/crashthepond, and it's completely free to you to like our videos there and subscribe to our channel. It helps out more than you can imagine. Please, if you want to give us a little like spike right now, anyone watching this that's enjoying it, please like the video. So Mikey Costley said, question, can we poop on Cronin for saying Ryan Strome has the highest offensive IQ on the team? Why does he seem so out of touch? I did not see him say that.
I feel like he said that about Zegras multiple times.
I think Strome has said that about Zegras. Here's the one thing I'll give Strome.
I think Cronin has said that about Zegras, though.
Potentially. But I do want to say this about Strome. I do not like a lot of the quotes that Greg Cronin has. I do think if you listen to Ryan Strome talk, though. So I think it was in today's postgame.
He has some great takes.
It was in the post game today is where it was. So Mikey, I haven't watched that post game yet, but I actually do think that Ryan Strome really understands the game and has a great knowledge of the game. That doesn't necessarily, I think, equate to offensive IQ while you're on the ice because you're not able to execute the plays. But I think in terms of being able to break down the game afterwards and being able to almost be a coach in that manner, I think Ryan Strome is great for that.
He may have the highest offensive IQ just generally, but yes, to your point, like he just can't execute on it.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Strome is like a sneaky potential future GM because he just seems to really get it.
Yep. Brandon Pineda said, who do you think is the best available coach if they change coaches?
Well, let me just pivot back to the older question, though. So if Cronin actually said that, that's just kind of a crazy thing to say. So
sure.
Cronin just says a lot of shit.
He does. But who do you think is the best coach available?
Well, this is going to be the same old of, oh, why don't you love David Carl? Just say David Carl. I don't know enough about David Carl. He may be the best. It's either him or Jay Woodcroft.
Yeah, give me Jay Woodcroft.
I think Jay Woodcroft is more proven. People will say, but he was the Edmonton coach, blah, blah. I think he's a good coach. I think he would make this team significantly better. I also think David Carl could potentially be an elite coach, but I'm a little scared of the rookie NHL coach.
And to Ruch's comment about does David Carl even want to be in the NHL? Yes, he has said he wants to be in the NHL. He is just waiting for the right opportunity. He is able to be picky. And also, I think if you remove Cronin and put any of these guys in, either of them, I think the
bar is so low.
There's a massive improvement to this team. I think that there was a little bit of chatter about kind of what does removing Cronin actually do, and I think all you have to do is look at the St. Louis Blues and look at their underlying numbers prior to having Jim Montgomery on the team. And yes, their record is not that flashy right now, but they are a team that has become a lot better in terms of how they're playing hockey. And so, look
at the Blue Jackets.
Also, yes, great.
The Blue Jackets to me are the best. Or I mean, hell, the Red Wings. Like if you want to talk about coaching changes, like Todd McClellan, the Red Wings are now the first wild card team in the East. So that kind of pains me to think about. But anyway,
Marc-Andre Morel said, "Question: what do you think we can get for Dumoulin? Honestly, I have no clue.
Like a third, maybe a second.
Personally,
his market is kind of drying up.
Yeah, so. Personally, I would just say move him. Move him soon as you can. Who cares if you're getting less of a pick? The benefit to trading him is you no longer have this logjam. Like it's the same thing as when the Ducks traded away Cam Fowler. I did not care about the return. I was bummed to see him go, but the benefit was removing the logjam.
Yeah, the return just does not matter. It really doesn't matter. It's really splitting hairs if that's what's holding this up.
Yep.
I mean, the Ducks don't have a second round pick this year, so maybe they're like holding out that they can get a second rounder, but again, just doesn't matter.
Yep. Let's see. Marc Andre also asked, what does the team being 21-0-2 and scoring 3 goals or more say to you? They have the best goaltending tandem in the league. That's all it says to me.
Yeah.
And like they should be like with the goaltending tandem they have, like if that's what they are doing when they're scoring 3 goals or more, the fact that they are below 500 is damning.
Yeah, that means they basically only win if they score 3 goals because they have 22 wins on the season.
Yeah.
So they're completely dependent on their goalie.
And that's also hilarious when you think about the fact that they have the best goaltending duo in the league, yet their record when they're not scoring much is low. And that's just because they're also poor defensively. Like the goaltending has been great, but they've been poor defensively around that.
Why are you so negative? Why are you so? Why can't you just be happy that they're close to NHL 500 and 9 points out? Why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just be happy that the kids are all struggling offensively and that there's no signs of progress?
Skadoosh said, question, the salary cap seems like it's going to shoot up significantly. Does this hurt the Ducks?
It's confirmed to go up. Like, it's not even but does it hurt them? No. I mean, it helps everyone. Like, I don't think anyone is hurt by this. I guess the only thing it could hurt is potential contract negotiations. Right, so like I think now with McTavish, it potentially changes some numbers. It'll change the numbers down the line for other guys when they come up. But like the thing is, the salary cap was always going to increase. Like this is nothing new, and so I think now seeing the actual number, seeing it etched in stone is pretty kind of jarring. You know, especially seeing the fact that it's going to get above 100 mil, but it's not something that I think I don't think anyone that actually works in front offices was like caught off guard by this. This is all baked into the equation.
Yep. All right. Do you want to do a shit show question?
Hell yeah.
Sean 11 said, explain the Luka Doncic trade like he was an 8.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So you are known far and wide as a Los Angeles Lakers fan, and last night in maybe the most stunning trade of any sport, any league I can remember, the Los Lakers acquire Luka Doncic from the Mavs. Luka Doncic, by the way, who just led his team to the NBA Finals last year, is 25 years old, is a top 3 player in basketball, was traded to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick, something like that. This is the most wild trade ever. But you being a big Lakers fan and you being a diehard NBA fan, as you've proven, I just want your take. I want your reaction.
I did not expect that to be turned back on me.
I mean, you can say anything. It doesn't matter.
Luka Doncic, I've heard, is good, and Lakers get good player, hence good.
Are you gonna buy a Luka jersey?
No, God, no. I don't own any Lakers stuff.
You should. He's number 77. It's kind of a flashy
Frank
number.
Vetrano.
He's got the like little accent mark on his name.
Damn.
You should just honestly, you should just lean into the.
Oh, I'm for sure leaning in just to troll Lou.
You should just lean into the bit because you've been hated on for being a bandwagon Laker fan, but I think you should just own it and just buy a Luka. Maybe get a jersey. Maybe don't go all in with the jersey, but get a.
And Plant Ranch also said have Jake rate his favorite Lakers who are not superstars. I'm not going to rate, but I'll throw out some of the ones that I liked. I liked Brian Shaw way back when. Mark Madsen, another throwback there. I'm currently just looking at the roster of the...
What are you talking about?
Plant Ranch said for me to rank my favorite Lakers who are not superstars.
Oh, is this in shit show
Yeah,
questions?
100% is in shit show questions.
Oh, okay.
I'm currently looking. Yeah, that's all I got. I'll go with Mark Madsen and Brian Shaw.
Okay. Explain the Luka Doncic trade like I was an 8-year-old.
That was what I asked you.
Well, I flipped it on you, but now I'm gonna answer it. Dumb team did a dumb thing. It's like imagine if the Oilers, maybe Oilers not the best example. Let's say the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs woke up one day and said, "You know what? Austin Matthews is kind of annoying behind the scenes, is maybe as not as in shape as we would like. So let's not start a bidding war," which has been confirmed. We're not going to do any sort of bidding war. We are just going to call a team for a veteran player, a star, like a really good veteran player, and we're just going to get the deal done right then and there. That's basically what happened. So, not good. Hilarious. Also, as a Warriors fan, I am pretty pissed because this continues the long tradition of the Lakers just falling ass backwards into franchise players without actually drafting them or developing them. But good for you guys. Good for you guys.
Lovely to be a Lakers fan.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, the Lakers don't have to do anything right, and they still end up with star players. It's crazy.
Yep. Rooch said, "Is Felix salty?"
About?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And
Didn't you have something prepped for this portion of the show?
yeah, but we're now late.
I mean, we have like 5 minutes.
Okay, fine. Let's do it. Let me vamp for a second.
I don't know what to vamp about. I mean,
I don't.
Am I mad about the game today? Yeah, I'm mad. This was a game that Canadians should have won.
Myself a bit. Whoops.
Man, Mark Andre is just seething in our chat. Screw analytics and look at the results. Well, then
I mean,
if you don't, if you
I
look,
think
I'll just say this, Mark Andre. If you don't like analytics, don't listen to our podcast. It's okay. You don't have to listen to us. We appreciate you being in the chat and like we love the banter, but like we can just disagree. We'll just agree to disagree.
And
but
also,
if you hate analytics that much, I can promise you, we are not the show for you. There's plenty of other Ducks podcasts that will never mention analytics that you can just have a blast with.
yeah. All right. So where are we going to?
Random Canadian city.
Yeah, pick a random place.
So for those who don't remember, this is a bit on the podcast where we just pick a random Canadian city and look at it on Google Maps. I mean, I don't know. Let's try northern Alberta. Northern Alberta.
Okay.
Like north. Keg River, perfect. Keg River right there. Keg River, Alberta.
There's a community library.
Redwater, Alberta. Yeah, if you're in the chat right now, like throw us a suggestion.
Redwater, Alberta. This looks like a small town.
Oh, this is promising.
Oh, wow.
Damn. That is like rural Canada right there. You've got a Home Hardware, sorry.
Home Hardware. 4.7 stars.
Wow. Oh, that's right. We pick a random business and then read a review. Find like a restaurant.
Okay. Let's get out of here. Now I'm nervous that I really doxed myself.
Did you?
But I don't know.
I don't think you did. Find a restaurant and let's just read a review.
Do you want to? Oh, Burger Bacon.
Burger Baron.
Oh, Burger Baron. Sorry.
That place looks not great. 4.3 stars.
Okay.
Adam, local guide. Can you click on more?
Oh, this is a long one.
This is a 5-star review for Burger Baron in Redwater, Alberta. It's been years since I've been to a Burger Baron, since the ones in Edmonton are pretty horrible.
Oh, this is a chain.
Good to know. Good to know that they're pretty horrible in Edmonton. I had a feeling that maybe the quality and pride would be better in a smaller town, and I was right. The service was great right when we stepped inside, as the two guys acknowledged us right away. Even after ordering, we were instructed to take a seat, and the guys brought out our food, utensils, napkins, and ketchup. The guys were incredibly friendly and even checked to see if we were doing well. You barely get this level of professionalism in an actual sit-down restaurant. The food and prices were amazing. It was around $30 to feed the four of us. Damn, that is a great deal. $30 for four people? And we still had leftovers. The mushroom burger and the Salisbury burger were heavenly. My only regret was not ordering a triple. French fries are uncoated, straight cut, which is rare these days and tasted delicious. Poutine was massive, but the gravy was a little bland. Otherwise, it was an enjoyable visit. Bonus marks for having a retro dining area. Brought back memories when I was a kid eating at these types of tables. This Burger Baron is a must visit. Wow. What a review. What a review for a random ass Burger Baron in Redwater, Alberta.
Let's see. Atchie's Steak and Pizza.
Wow.
Yeah, let's do a quick little street view of this, and then we'll get out of here. This is definitely small town Canada.
Oh my God. I mean, granted, there's probably a lot of cities in the United States that look just like this,
but
it's a different vibe.
All right, where was this? Because I just did it based upon someone saying it.
Oh, it's outside of Edmonton.
It's outside. It's a suburb of Edmonton.
I wonder if that's by where Olin Zellweger's from. Isn't he? Maybe. Or is he from Calgary? I always forget.
I don't know.
Well, shout out to our Canadian listeners.
Yes.
Shout out to everyone who's listening in Canada. We support you. We are on your team. And that's all I'll say. Are we done here?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Check out my grandparents' town in Central Texas, is what someone is saying.
Next time.
What's it called? If you throw it in the chat right now, I'll look it up.
Next time. We should get out of here.
Need to know a name? But if you want to support the channel... Oh, Monday, Texas. All right, let's just... A quick Google. Monday, Texas. Holy shit, that is
small.
Very remote. Okay, but thank you for listening, everyone. We greatly appreciate you. If you want to support the podcast, there's a really easy way to do that. Go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/crashthepond. For $2 a month, you get access to our patrons' exclusive Discord server where you get to connect with us. You get to chat about hockey with us at all times of the day. You can also connect with the diehard Ducks fan community. You can up that pledge to $7.50 a month for access to 2 bonus podcasts and player-exclusive video breakdowns. You also, what was I going to say? $7.50 a month. Yeah, patreon.com/crashthepond. Leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Blue Sky and X. And on that note, we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Bye.